Both the Bible and Greek mythology create man first, then woman. Having man and woman is not the same as being able to produce human beings. Because since the first man and the first woman were not created at the same time, when the first man met the first woman, he did not know how to have sex. Follow me, subscribe to my channel, and let's explore how human concepts are formed in mythology. Listen to our Noble's monumental work, Ideas and Myths.
Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God actually say, 'You shall not eat of any tree in the garden?'" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, 'You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.' So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate."
Here's a quandary identifying good and evil. Why cover themselves with the leaves of the fig tree? Is it evil to be naked? Covering one's body is actually the birth of shame, which comes from lust. In the Garden of Eden built by God, there was only Adam and Eve, and there was no more human interaction. There was no social relationship between human beings, so there was no ethics, and there was no distinction between good and evil. The only thing that God forbids is the lust between a man and a woman. The Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, known simply as the Knights Hospitaller, is one of the three historically famous orders of chivalry. It has evolved into the Order of Malta, a quasi-national organization that is an observer at the United Nations. Interested readers may refer to the Mediterranean epic trilogy, The Last Great Siege /1453, Empires of the Sea, and City of Fortune, How Venice Ruled the Seas by the British historian Roger Crowley. Around the 12th century, in the center of France, in the middle of Indre, a department named after the river Indre, with the name Marigny, there was the famous Château de Plaincaralt, next to which the Knights of the Hospital founded the Plaincaralt Chapel. During the French Revolution, this church was destroyed, and in 1793 it was abandoned. Until it was restored in 1994, the Plaincaralt Chapel was also declared a historical monument, and as part of the Plaincaralt Castle complex, it was designated a historical monument by the French Ministry of Culture. The Plaincaralt Chapel is known for its unusual Romanesque art, especially the Christian frescoes. Among these frescoes, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden are very well known. In the center of the fresco is a huge Amanita muscaria mushroom with a cluster of 4 mushrooms at the bottom, and the serpent offering Eve the fruit that identifies good and evil. Amanita muscaria mushroom, also known as fly agaric or fly amanita, is a neurotoxic tanistrophic fungus known for its hallucinogenic properties, with the main psychoactive component being muscimol and its neurotoxic precursor botanic acid. In ancient Greek literature, Greek priestesses had to eat poisonous fly umbrellas before performing religious ceremonies so that they could travel to the heavens and talk to the gods. In addition, eating the umbrella of poisonous flies can also be aphrodisiac. Priestesses would also have sex parties during their ancient rituals. Fruit in Hebrew is called a pry. The Bible does not explicitly state what fruit the forbidden fruit is. In a great deal of literature, the term forbidden fruit is used to imply that a young man and woman are having their first sexual intercourse. Why did the serpent tempt the woman to eat the forbidden fruit? Sigmund Freud was an Austrian psychologist, psychoanalyst, and philosopher who founded psychoanalysis and is considered one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. Freud considered the snake as a symbol of the male phallus. Pythons, in particular, are not ordinary snakes and contain qualities such as being strong, large, reckless, and not easily subdued. In many clan cultures, the snake's connotations include sexuality, sexual seduction, and so on. In Greek mythology, Medusa is the image of a snake demon, with live venomous snakes in her hair. Those who gaze into her eyes are turned to stone. In the head of Medusa, Freud interpreted the cutting off of Medusa's head by Perseus in Greek mythology as a symbol of castration, and thus the fearful effect of Medusa as a horrific reaction of men to castration. Let's look at the Bible again. After Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, they were cast out of the Garden of Eden by God. After being cast out of the Garden of Eden, what did they do?
Then the Lord God said, Behold, the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reach out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. He drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he placed the cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life.
It was only after being thrown out of the Garden of Eden that Adam and Eve conceived, that children were reproduced, and that mankind came into being.
Now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord.
Notice that immediately after Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden, they had sex and then had a son, Cain. And in the Garden of Eden, there were no years of stealing forbidden fruit, and they lived carefree lives that would not have produced offspring. There is another bug here. God says, the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. The exact translation of this phrase is that the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. So who are we? Are they gods? Is there more than one God? I'll leave that for later. In Greek mythology, Prometheus created the first man and Hephaestus created the first woman. The first woman was given to Epimetheus to be his wife. This begs the question, how were humans reproduced? In Greek mythology, Epimetheus and Pandora had a daughter, Pyrrha, who later married Prometheus' son, Deucalion. Pyrrha and Deucalion were the only two who survived a great flood that punished mankind. The reason why Zeus instructed Hephaestus, the god of fire, to create the first woman was to give Pandora's box, which brought disaster to man, to the first man. Therefore, Epimetheus is actually the first man. Then we look at the name of Epsimeridus, which means hindsight, and Prometheus, whose name is foresight. That's the difference between man and God. God can see the future, but man can't. In ancient Greece, priests consulted the gods to predict the outcome of an event after making a sacrifice. We also know that the ancients worshipped their ancestors of their heroes as gods. In ancient Greece, and especially in Roman times, heroes were also worshipped as gods after their death. Romulus, the son of Mars, was worshipped as a god, as well as Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius I, Hadrian, Commodus, Constantine I, and the apostate Urian, among others. So the ancestors of men, especially those heroic figures, could be gods. What is certain is that Pilar was human. Then her parents were the first man and the first woman. As an afterthought, Epicurus was given all kinds of talents by Prometheus to distribute among himself and the animals. But the good and ignorant Epsimeridus, forgetting to leave a talent for himself, gave all his talents to different animals. Seeing how mediocre Epimetheus was, Prometheus had to impart to him cleverness and wisdom, and of course instructed him ahead of time on how to get along with the gods to be wary of their deceptions. When Zeus was deceived by Prometheus' tricks, he ordered Hephaestus, the god of fire, to create the first woman Pandora, and Pandora, in the eyes of the early Catholic fathers, was Eve incarnate. Jean Cazin was a French painter, sculptor, etcher, and geometrician. He was known as Jean Cazin the Elder to distinguish him from his son Jean Cazin the Younger. Jean Cazin painted Eva Prima Pandora in 1550, which is now in the collection of the Louvre Museum. The equivocation of the two occurs in the painting, which shows a nude woman lying in a grotto. Her right elbow rests on a skull, signifying the coming of death. In her right hand she holds an apple branch, an attribute of Eve. A serpent is wrapped around her left arm, alluding to Eve's temptation. Her hand rests on an uncovered jug and open Pandora's pot, also commonly known as Pandora's box, which is characteristic of Pandora, the sign that gave the painting its name Hands Above. Charles Pierre Collardeau was a French poet. In 1774, he published Les Hommes de Prométhée, a poem about love. In it, he sang that Pandora, who was made of clay and endowed with naive grace and affection, was said to wander through an enchanted landscape. There she meets the first man created by Prometheus and responds warmly to his embrace. Finally, the couple left their marriage couch as lords of the world and kings of the universe.
It has been a common assumption throughout Christian history that Pandora was a type of Eve. Because of Pandora's prominence in Greco-Roman philosophy, literature, and mythology, the aspects of their stories that bore similarities were exaggerated in such a way that Pandora became a Greek Eve, and Eve became a Christian Pandora. It is remarkable, at first glance, how much their mythologies appear to have in common. In fact, nearly every ancient culture had a creation myth, and many of these myths share a surprising number of similarities with the Genesis creation myth. Humans that were originally formed from clay, the acquisition of knowledge and free will as a central aspect of the tale, and a woman taking the blame for human suffering, are all common themes in creation mythology. When it comes to Eve and Pandora, each is the first woman in the world. They both play a central part in a story of transition from an original state of plenty and ease to one of suffering and death. They are both created after men. They are both tempted into doing something that they should not do. They are both responsible for introducing evil into the world.
We know who taught women about sex. So why is God afraid of sex between men and women? Who is really the dominant one behind sex? Follow me and subscribe to my channel. Together we will explore why God considers sex to be evil and sinful. Let's listen to our Noble's monumental work, Ideas and Myths.